Welcome to the Barents Observer, and this podcast where we bring up pressing issues and look behind the headlines. My name is Atle Staalesen, and today we are going to talk about jamming and spoofing. And in the studio is our own expert, editor of the Barents Observer, Thomas Nilsen.
Nice to be here.
Thomas, you have written several stories about spoofing and jamming, and you know quite a bit about this. What is going on?
Well, what is going on in the border region between Norway and Russia, and between Finland and Russia, is that we are experiencing more and more jamming. It's electronic warfare from the Russian side, sending signals that are interfering the GPS and other navigation systems well into Norwegian side of the territory. And this have negative effects on civilian aviation and other users of satellite-based navigation systems.
But lately we have seen also examples of spoofing. What is the difference between jamming and spoofing?
It's quite interesting, and it's a big difference. While jamming is electronic warfare, where you send signals to disrupt GPS signals, to kind of destroy them so they don't work. Spoofing is way more serious, because there you send signals that pretend that the GPS is somewhere else than it actually is. So in one way you could describe it as a way of making false GPS signals. So the receiver think that it is a total different place than where it actually is. Spoofing is also way more complicated to do. I mean, jamming is equipment you can buy on eBay for $100, and you can carry it in your pocket and disrupt the GPS signal. But spoofing, that requires much more advanced technology, and we used to say that it's more military technology that are used to send false signals. Recently,
you were actually yourself on a flight that experienced spoofing, and you talked with the pilot after landing. What did he say?
Yes, it was a quite interesting flight with Scandinavian Airlines up from Oslo to Kirkenes, the airport closest to the border to Russia. And just before we took off from Oslo, I've talked with the regional police here in the border regions of northern Norway. And they had that week been tracking GPS jamming to find out where it's coming from and how high up in the altitude it's affecting, does it affect on ground, and so on. And they told me that for the first time they had also seen spoofing, meaning false signals of GPS. So when we landed in Kirkenes in the late evening in polar night, I had to ask the pilot if everything was okay on approach when we were flying to Kirkenes. And he was quite excited, because he had on that evening experienced spoofing, seeing that the GPS signal showed that the aircraft was actually a very different place than where we were in reality.
It sounds quite scary and unsafe. Is it safe to fly in this region?
Spoofing and jamming of satellite-based navigation systems is a very, very serious thing. But to our understanding, and also what the pilot on the Scandinavian Airlines aircraft told me, they have now, due to this frequent disruption of satellite signals, they have decided that all commercial aircrafts that are flying to the border region close to Russia and are approaching the airports like Kirkenes, they are not using the GPS as their main way of navigating. They have other ways. They can use radio signals, they can land on visuals, and so on. So to be on the safe side, they have decided not to trust the GPS, And in that way, we can say that it is safe to fly on the commercial aircrafts at those airports that have alternative ways of landing. But there are also other smaller airports in northernmost part of Norway that do not have alternative landing systems. And that have, to our knowledge, led to ambulance planes, for instance, have to abort landings at these small airports.
But there are not only aircrafts use GPS to navigate. There are also other kind of means of transportation, for example, vessels, boats that use GPS very actively. What about the jamming and spoofing on boats, for example?
This is it's a very highly relevant question, and the answer is that we don't know too much. The maritime border areas between Norway and Russia is not that much surveyed in trying to find out how the jamming is affecting the navigation on vessels and so on. If there is any spoofing in the Barents Sea, in the maritime border areas, we haven't heard about that, no. But that doesn't mean that it does not affect. But to our knowledge, the spoofing that has been taking place is happening up in the air at several thousand feet, and the signals are coming from the Kola Peninsula and are affecting the air traffic. So in regards to spoofing, that is a challenge for commercial aircrafts and others that are flying, but not necessarily on the ground. But we have seen many examples of jamming effects on ground, which have disrupted, for instance, navigation for construction workers and those who are building roads and so on. And that can be quite a serious thing. Also worth mentioning is the fact that jamming of GPS signals can actually put life in danger. If there is a search and rescue operation going on, where the police in bad weather, which we have quite much of up here inside the Arctic Circle, if a person goes missing out in the wilderness, and the police and the other search capabilities that are working together with the police don't have satellite-based navigations available, that can actually cause loss of life, and that they don't know where to search and how to find those people. So it is a serious situation that we are facing, being neighbors to Russia.
We are sitting here in Kirkenes, and Russia is just a few kilometers away. And you say that this comes from the Kola Peninsula, which is Russia's very militarized region in the north. Why does Russia do this?
That's a very good question, and we have asked Russia's Northern Fleet several times, but they don't want to talk with foreign media. So we don't get any direct answers, neither from the local military forces close to the border, or the Northern Fleet, or the Ministry of Defense. But we see a pattern here. The first time jamming were measured on the Norwegian side of the border was back in 2017, and it intensified in 2018. And at that time, we believe that Russia was sending a strong signal to Norway, because the timing was no coincidence. This happened at the same time as it was big NATO exercises going on in Norway, and it happened when there were American military bombers that were deployed temporarily to air bases in Norway. We have seen the same in Finland, when there are foreign forces, American forces, British, Swedish, Norwegian, that the jamming have been sent there. So that's a kind of bad behavior, military signaling from Russia to Norway. But in recent years, the jamming has intensified very much, and I think today it's no longer a question about signaling. We know, Russia know, that Norway is a NATO country, and it doesn't help to send signals to Norway this way. But what we are seeing today is that actually Russia are using electronic warfare in a way to protect their own bases on the Kola Peninsula that are core important for Russia's ongoing barbaric war against Ukraine. Some of those strategic bombers that are launching cruise missiles on civilian targets in Ukraine are coming from the Kola Peninsula. And Russia is also up here in the north, like they are doing further south, protecting their own bases by jamming GPS signals. This makes it more difficult for Ukrainian drones or Ukrainian aircraft to target military assets on the Russian side of the border. And last summer, in July 2024, we saw the first drone attacks from Ukraine all the way up to the Kola Peninsula, which is a distance of about 1,700 kilometers. And I think that the jamming we see nearly every day now up in the north, that is also affecting Norway, is a Russian self-protection of their important military bases. We are neighboring a country at war, and this war have dramatic consequences also far away from the border to Ukraine.
You mentioned Russian military infrastructure in the Kola Peninsula, and you mentioned Alenia, which is of course a very important base for Russia these days. Alenia is, after all, quite far away from where we sit from northern Norway, and we still have these problems here. How come?
Yes, the Alenia Air Base, which is home to the Tupolev 95 strategic bombers that are participating in the launching of cruise missiles towards Ukraine, is about 200 kilometers from the border to Norway. And this tells us how effective the electronic warfare systems around the Alenia base, but also other airports on the Kola Peninsula. They are sending very, very strong signals that are jamming the satellite navigation systems like GPS. You could in a way describe it as a kind of dome over the area, a circle around the area of this airport in order to mislead and to stop Ukrainian drones. And Ukrainian drones have been navigating on GPS signals. So if they can disrupt those signals or send false signals, making the drones believe that they are somewhere else than they are, that is a reason why Russia is doing this. So although far away from the border, the effect of those signals are crossing into northern Finland and northern Norway.
Over the last months, we have seen several drone attacks on this military infrastructure, like Alenia and also Severomorsk. As you say, these bases are up to 2,000 kilometers away from Ukrainian territory. And still, the Ukrainian drones manage to fly all this way across major parts of European Russia and almost reach their targets. How do the Ukrainians and the Ukrainian drones manage to bypass Russian defenses?
We don't know all the technological developments that is happening, but what we do know is that there is a race. There is a technological race for the drones and the anti-drone measures that Russia is taking. So this is Russia's war on Ukraine is a race between Russia and Ukraine on jamming signals for the drones. And you are right, Ukraine have successfully managed to bypass areas that we know are affected by GPS jamming. We don't know for sure, but we have an idea. We might believe that the Ukrainian drones are also using artificial intelligence and photo recognition when they are flying. So we can believe that they are flying in the border areas from Ukraine into southern Russia, the Kursk, the Rostov region, further south, which is quite effectively jammed in a direction. And then they fly for a long distance over Russian airspace with the GPS. But when they are approaching the Kola Peninsula and the GPS no longer work, they switch over to photo recognition, probably with computers that are pre-programmed with satellite images, and the drones are by that trying to find the airports of Ulenaya or other military targets like we saw last December all the way north to Severomorsk and so on. How can we say this? Well, we see that Russia is taking other measures than only GPS jamming to stop the drones. They have, for instance, since last summer, placed tires on the wings of these strategic bombers. And artificial intelligence and photo recognition might sound very smart, but it is not that very smart. So by placing tires on the wings of the bombers, the drones' cameras will believe that it is something totally different than a plane when they are approaching, and then Russia hope that the drone will crash in the forest or out on the tundra instead at the airport.
We talked about effects on Norwegian airplanes and civilian air traffic, but I suspect that also Russian civilian aviation, Russian planes are affected by this jamming and spoofing. What do you know about that?
We know very little. Russia is becoming a more and more closed country, and we cannot just call to the pilot association of Aeroflot and ask them these questions. But we see that, yes, Russian civilian aviation is also very affected. There are no-fly zones all in the areas close to the border to Ukraine, actually all the way from the Caspian Sea to the Belarus Kaliningrad region, where commercial aircrafts don't fly at all, both because it's dangerous, anti-aircraft missiles and so on, it's a war zone, but also because of GPS jamming in the area. Sometimes when there are drone attacks, which it has been at least 5-6 times in the Murmansk region over the last 6, 7, 8 months. We have seen that commercial aircrafts flying from Leningrad region, mainly St. Petersburg Airport, the Pulkovo Airport, and Sheremetyevo in Moscow up north, they start to circle over the White Sea region. That means that something is going on the airspace further north. And we have also seen Russian pilots that are complaining that they are afraid that they will run out of fuel when they are circling. It's quite far distance between the airports, the Murmansk airport in Murmansk and the Apatiti airport close to Kirovsk, further south on the Kola Peninsula. But from there and south, the planes actually have to go all the way either to Arkhangelsk or to back to St. Petersburg. So we have seen pilots that are complaining that they are afraid of actually running low on fuel. And this is hampering air traffic in the Murmansk region. But Russian aircrafts, most commercial airliners are flying Airbus and Boeing aircrafts, and we know that they are using GPS as a way of navigating. But if there are alternative navigation ways in the cockpit of either it's Aeroflot or the Pobeda or the other airliners flying there, we don't know.
Okay, so we don't know, and it's hard to speak with the Russians. It's almost impossible to speak with the Russians. We get less and less information from Russia. We are strongly affected, Norway, Finland and other border countries to Russia at war. What can we do then?
It is actually sad to say, it's very little we can do. When the jamming started back in 2017 and 18, it affected northern Finland as well. And the president of Finland at that time, Nilsen, he called directly to Vladimir Putin and said that Finland consider this as a clear violation of Finnish airspace, of Finnish sovereignty. It didn't help. The jamming continues and it affects negatively Finnair's flight to airports close to the Russian border, either in southern Finland or further up north, up to the Kainuu region and so on. For us in Norway, it doesn't help to call to Moscow and protest. We know that Russia is doing it both as a self-protection and deliberately to trouble the Norwegians. What we could do, one way to handle it could be to put up our own electronic warfare and try to jam the Russian satellite navigation system like GLONASS and so on. But that would be quite a dramatic escalation in the tensions up north, and that is not in Norway's own interest. So Norway can do it, but they will not do that, because the high north is an area where all countries can benefit from having as low tensions as possible. After all, the Kola Peninsula is home to some of the most strategic important nuclear weapons that Moscow has in their possession.
Thomas Nilsen, editor of the Barents Observer, thank you for these words and this explanation. The Barents Observer will definitely continue to follow developments with jamming and spoofing and other key developments in this region. Thank you for watching and listening to our podcast. Keep on following the Barents Observer. Stay tuned.